Actually, I have an exercise for you guys. I told Viva I didn't like the position I was going to be speaking in because after the insulin crash at lunch. So I'd like to try an exercise. Everyone stand up. If your first name begins between A and M, I want you to put your hands about a foot apart.
A and M.
And if your name begins from N to Z, put your hands an inch apart. And just stand right there and thank you. So if my presentation really bites, I can still say you gave me a standing ovation. Thank you. Thank you guys. So my name is Alastair, and I'm delighted to speak to you this afternoon about lessons in happiness from a 40-year-old social entrepreneur. That would be me. So I think that any good presentation begins with a conclusion. So this is where I'm going to conclude with. Real happiness and real success only comes when I focus my intelligence, my persistence, and my community in serving others while I'm on this planet. So I learned this lesson the hard way over 20 years, and I want you guys to learn other lessons so that you don't have to spend 20 years learning the lessons that I had to learn. And this is the story of my life. It's true. I wasn't always a social entrepreneur. In fact, I grew up in a Chinese household, and both my parents were doctors. And if you've read that book by Amy Chua, Tiger Lesson, the book Tiger Mothers, my mother was a dragon mother. So I think in my household, there were only 3 careers you could have that would be considered successful. And I remind you, they were doctors. You could be a doctor, you could be a doctor, or you could be a doctor. And that's absolutely true. So my brother went to MIT, and he got a medical school scholarship, and suddenly the pressure was off me. And I realized that by my parents' math, there was only my brother and I, but 50% of their kids going to med school was okay by them. So the pressure was off me, and where does a smart kid go if he doesn't want to go, if he's bad in math and science, which I am? You go to law school. So I ended up going to law school, and I thought law school was going to be great, right? Only I'm an idiot, because you don't learn anything about the law in law school. Are there any lawyers here? Yeah, you can probably relate. You read these 17th century texts. You don't learn anything about the current state of the law. So in order to learn about the law, you have to work the law, which is why I guess they call it practicing law, so that you can learn about the law. So I took the job as a lawyer, and in my first law firm, they promised me an appeal and a verdict in a trial in my first 2 years. And for the lawyers in the audience, a big law firm in New York City, that's an unbelievable promise, because you're a second-year associate. Generally in big law firms, second-year associates are relegated to researching, blue booking, footnoting, and all of this menial labor. Xerox machine, I think they call it document jockeying, doc jocks. So and they fulfilled their promise. By my second year, I took a verdict, and I won my appeal. I won both cases, and I should have been on top of the world. I was making great money. I was winning all the cases that I touched. And I should have been extremely happy, but I wasn't. In fact, I was miserable. Around this time, I remembered having a dream. And I was playing a video game called Robotron. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. Everyone loves this game, Robotron. It's 2 joysticks. One controls the direction. Other controls where you're shooting. There's only 4 directions you can move in, 4 directions you can shoot in. And all these lemmings start chasing you. And the object is to avoid them and shoot them and kill them all. Everyone I know loves this game. I hate this game. I hate it. And in my dream, I'm playing with a bag of quarters, and I'm pumping in quarters into this machine, this video game that I hate. I absolutely hate, but everyone else loves. And then I remember running out of quarters, and then I ran to the change guy, and I asked him, with a $10 bill, and I asked him, can I have more quarters? And he said, I'm sorry, there are no more quarters. And I woke up in a cold sweat. And the lesson that I learned is that you got to do things that make you happy, or your quarters will run out. So in this dream, I've come to analyze the quarters represent life units. And once you put in a quarter in the machine, you can't get it back. If you don't do what you love to do now, you'll never be happy. So that's the lesson that I learned. So I ended up starting. I left the law to become an entrepreneur. Why? Because at the time I was a lawyer, I was working 160 hours a week. In fact, we had an expression as a lawyer. We were working 160-hour weeks, so we were working 4 times more than the average person, only making twice the salary, aging 6 times faster, and so we just thought that it was like a no-win situation for us. So I became an entrepreneur because I thought that it would bring me all the things that a lawyer didn't bring me. I thought it would give me freedom. I thought entrepreneurs are their own bosses. You can take your own vacations. But boy, was I wrong. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And in reality, when you're an entrepreneur, and I think all the budding entrepreneurs or business guys out here can relate, when you first start your first business, things take 6 times longer than they should. Things cost 6 times more than they should. And time lapses 6 times faster than it should. So if you do the math, by the time you've launched your product, you're 216 times behind where you should be. So, you know, and I have a poignant story here. So the company that I started was called B Corner. It was a technology play. It was based in New York. And we were on our last legs, about 3 years in, and we had a few $1,000s in the bank. But we had negotiated a multi-million-dollar deal with a Fortune 500 company. And this deal was going to save us. I mean, it was all we had. So I spent the remaining money that we had I got a new office, I furnished it, and I hired 5 employees to service this new client. What I didn't know was that the undercurrent of this was this Fortune 500 company was being acquired by a private equity firm. And I'll never forget the call. It was a fall day, it was raining, and my contact called me at the Fortune 500 company and he said, Alastair, we can't do the deal because a private equity firm just bought us and they put the kibosh on all spending. And I remember walking home, it was raining that day, I walked home 20 blocks in the rain, dejected, sadly. So this is the lesson that I learned. You will fail. Don't be afraid of failing. Embrace it and learn from it. So the story of my life comes back again, because then I started a second company. And the second company, I understood the mistakes that I made in the first company. I could launch websites quickly. I knew how to launch it effectively, inexpensively. I knew how to market very effectively, use PR, and do it really inexpensively. And I, most importantly, learned how to create revenue models that worked. The second company I started was very successful, and in fact, I sold it for cash. And the story that I have about that story is we closed on a Friday, and there was no mention of how I was going to get paid, by the certified check or wire transfer. And the first payment, installment payment, was $1 million. So we were doing fairly well. I'd done fairly well. Then one of the partners that closed said, come by this afternoon and you can pick up your payment. I thought, oh, okay, great. It was a Friday afternoon. That Friday evening, I drove to his house. And he answered at the door and he said, who did you come with? And I said, I came with myself. Why? And he said, you didn't bring anyone? And I was like, no, why would I need to bring anyone? And he waved me into his living room, and his living room was a huge chest filled with cash. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen $1 million in cash. There's a lot of bills, and they're heavy. So I made it, right? And I remember flying to Thailand, sitting on the beach of Koh Samui, thinking, I made it. You know, I could buy anything I want, and I can sit on this beach forever, you know. And the only problem was that I didn't need to buy anything, and I didn't really like sitting on beaches. So this is the lesson that I learned: money doesn't change you; it changes your life. People do. And there's a joke that goes along with this slide. And what do you call a jerk who's rich? Oh, I'm sorry, a jerk with money. I gave away the punchline. Rich jerk. And the theory is that, you know, for all the people with for all the people that are insecure and they believe that money's going to change them, money isn't going to change you. Like, if you're insecure and you were unable to ask in high school you were unable to ask the girl out or the guy out that you really liked to the prom, if you're a millionaire, you'll still not be able to ask the pretty girl or the handsome guy at the bar out. It's not going to change you. People change you. So basically, after this, I'm sitting on the beach in Thailand, and I'm thinking to myself, well, you know, why did I start these companies? And I began to think about it. And during the second company was based in the Philippines. And I ended up, and the Philippines is an interesting place. 5% of the population own 95% of the wealth, which unfortunately means that 95% of the population only owns 5% of the wealth. My cousin, who lived in the Philippines, lived on the rich side of that balance equation. And every night after work, he would take me out to these 5-star clubs, 5-star restaurants, 5-star hotels for the very best in dining, dancing, and drinking experiences. My clients, however, were not would not frequent these establishments. So I kept on asking him, look, can you take me to an establishment, you know, where my clients would end up going to? And he kept on saying, no, Al, very dangerous, very dangerous. So until one year, about 5 years ago, he said, Alastair, get in the SUV. And I said, oh, great, another 5-star club, you know. But he ended up taking me to a place called Smoky Mountain. This is Smoky Mountain. This is Anna. She lives on that shack up there. Smoky Mountain's a 300-acre landfill that 30,000 residents live on. They actually live on garbage. And they call it Smoky Mountain because the garbage decomposes at such a high temperature that at any given time there are flare-ups where it emits the smoke that reeks of vomit and death. It's absolutely harrowing. In any event, I went to the Smoky Mountain with my cousin, and interesting as an aside, before I left the SUV, he said, make sure they don't bite, touch, or scratch you, or else you have to get a rabies shot. But in any event, I saw some kids playing with a soccer ball made out of rags. And I watched as they played soccer. I watched as one kid stepped on a rusty circuit board and cut his foot. And I watched as he looked at his wound, squeezed blood out of the gash, shrugged his shoulders, and hobbled back to playing. And that's when I realized these kids or their parents don't have the means to buy foot protection. So the lesson that I learned was, holy crap. While I'm worried about my waistline, these kids have terrible lives. So you should appreciate what you have. So after that trip to Smoky Mountain, I went to a department store and bought 50 pairs of shoes and brought them back to Smoky Mountain to distribute to the kids. And that made me feel good for about 5 minutes because I didn't have enough shoes for all the kids in that community, let alone all the other communities around the world like that. So that that's when I had my moment that I call my epiphany. So I started a company called GreenSoul Shoes. GreenSoul Shoes' mission is to shoe underprivileged children around the world in an eco-beneficial way. We do this by working with local artisans in developing nations to produce a 100% upcycled sandal. That's a sandal that's entirely made out of rubber tires and air tubes with no staples, tacks, or glues. And for each one that we sell, we give one back to an underprivileged child back in the community that made them. It's our goal to shoe 1 million kids in 5 years. And you hear about social enterprise, you hear about triple bottom line companies, and basically a triple bottom line company really focuses on the 3 Ps. People, planet, and profit. So just when you hear these social entrepreneurs and triple bottom line vocabulary, just think of the 3 Ps, people, planet, profit. In our business, we handle all 3. We actually help people by stimulating their economies by having them make sandals for us. Of course, we help people by giving away a sandal for each one that we sell. We help the planet by pulling tires out of landfills, and tires in the third world communities can be pretty horrendous because they sit in your community, they breed, it collects rainwater, it breeds mosquitoes, and spreads malaria and dengue fever. Last year alone, there were 80 million cases of dengue fever. It's not an American phenomenon or epidemic, so you don't really hear about it, but dengue fever is a particularly insidious disease because unless it's treated early and regularly, it has a high fatality rate. And then, of course, we maintain a healthy and respectable margins to continue our social and ecological mission. So the lesson that I learned from GreenSoul Shoes is that old adage, it's better to give than to receive. And this makes sense when you hear about Bill Gates and say Warren Buffett, the 2 richest guys in American society. In fact, Melinda Gates will be speaking next, so you get to experience this. You get to hear from her. When you hear Bill Gates and Warren Buffett talk about Microsoft and Berkshire Hathaway, they're speaking in a really monotone fashion. But when you hear Bill Gates speak at TED, he's suddenly uplifted and he's talking about the eradication of malaria. And when you hear about Warren Buffett, you hear him talk about him glow when he talks about his donation of $50 billion to the Gates Foundation and all the great work that Gates Foundation does. I think these guys have gotten it. They understand that money isn't the end-all and be-all, that they have all the money, you can only spend so much money. And then the rest of it is leaving a legacy and helping other people. So this is what I learned about when starting companies. The first company you start, you'll learn the most. The second company you start, you'll earn the most. And the third company you start, you give back the most. And this makes sense because, for me, the first company, you have no idea what you're doing. Then you fix your business model and you first can earn the most. Then you realize, there's a moment of realization where you realize money's not doing it for me. And why is it that I started these companies? Why is it that you do these things? And for me, I began to look introspectively. It was really for selfish reasons. Like I did it to make money so that I would provide for my family. I'd be able to provide for my mother, my father, who were getting old, retiring from the medical field. And of course I could handle, take care of my brother, who didn't go to med school, by the way. But then I realized that if I could expand out my core people that I cared about, if you expand out that sphere, that your mission will be that much greater and you'll be that much happier. So which brings me to why I'm here today. I actually looked back in my life putting this presentation together, and I realized that anything that I wanted, I got. Meaning, I wanted to be a lawyer, I got that. But ultimately, what I got wasn't really what I wanted, right? I wanted to become a lawyer. I got that. Didn't really want it. I wanted to start a company to make money, but I didn't really want it. I started GreenSoul Shoes to start a social enterprise, and now I'm beginning to think that that's not even what I want. And what I'm here to say is that I'm on the stage because I believe that I need to steward leadership into other companies to help them do well by doing good. So I want you to ask yourself, what can I do to focus my intelligence, persistence, and community to serve others? And to show this commitment, to my commitment to this, if you go to the greensoulshoes.org website, I'm going to create an area where you can just say you saw me at TED. I'm going to create a list, and then I'm going to invite someone to do one of our shoe drops on my dime. And for the rest of you guys, maybe we'll invite you as well if you guys are interested. And wouldn't kill you to buy a pair of sandals while you're at it. Thank you very much.